I don't know if this sounds familiar to anyone. I've tried looking up who she might be or if someone else has seen her, but no luck, so I have named her myself. Let me know if you know who I'm talking about. I could really use someone to talk to about this without feeling like I'm crazy. Okay, well, it started a couple of weeks ago. I was hanging out in my apartment after work. It was dark out and, wanting some fresh air, I stepped out onto my balcony. I live in a pretty quiet part of the city. It's not a rich or poor neighborhood, but somewhere in the middle. So I stood outside, had a smoke, listening to the muffled sound of the ambient city nightlife going on around me. I always liked that. There was something nice about standing in the stillness of my neighborhood, while hearing the city busy with people and their lives going on just out of sight. That probably sounds weird, but whatever. Anyway, I was lost in thought, but I could hear some music pounding away in the distance. Some dogshit club music that all sounds the same when you're sober. That same basic beat going on. And that's when I noticed her. A woman walking down the street. At this point I could just make out a silhouette, but I noticed her long hair shifting as she walked. Only there was something off about how she was moving. Getting closer, she passed under a streetlight. I could see she was swaying side to side. Not in a drunken way, it was way too exaggerated. There was a rhythm to it like left, right, left, right, left, right. It was weird, but not all that creepy. Yet. I was a little concerned that maybe she was injured or in need of help. My apartment was on the first floor, so I wasn't too high up. Figured I'd call out and ask if she was okay. I waited for her to get close enough to the next streetlight that I could see her better, and when I called out to her, she stopped dead in her tracks under the light, but never stopped waving side to side. There was a moment of silence before I called out to her again, asking if she was alright or needed help. Silence. Uncomfortable, I took my eyes off her for a moment to look down the street. Figured maybe someone else would come up, but when I looked back, she had turned to face me, still waving, left, right, left, right. The longer I stared at her, the more I realized how tall she was. Must have been about 6'8", I thought at the time. And her hair was long. I mean really long, covering her shoulders and face. She was wearing a long dress or coat, it's hard to say. This show got way too eerie quickly, and I soon had enough. I pulled my phone out from my pocket and called the police. I didn't want her arrested, but I really didn't know who else to call. Maybe she was missing from a home or something, and they could get her back? After I hung up, I wanted to head back inside. But first I wanted to get some footage of this. I wanted others to see what I was seeing and maybe have some proof in case I was ever called out. But as I got my phone camera ready, she quickly moved into an alley and disappeared into the darkness. That was weird, I thought. The police eventually got to my street and I told them what had happened, pointing them down the way she took. They left and I went back inside. I occasionally checked outside just to see if she'd come back, but I didn't see her again for the rest of the night. The next day was pretty normal, and my story from the night before went down well at work. Had all kinds of theories, from an escaped lunatic, to a witch, to a potential stalker. Funny at the time, not so much when I got home, and the sun went down. Once again the fresh air and the smoke were calling me. I stepped outside on my balcony, lit one up, and there she was, on the other side of the street, facing me and still swaying side to side. How long had she been there? Why was she here? I looked up and down the street, hoping someone would come along and see this. but it was dead. Just the two of us caught in this creepy one-sided dance. The idea that this might become a regular thing was terrifying enough, but the edge of my balcony wasn't that high from the ground, and someone this tall and presumably unstable could easily climb up while I was sleeping or elsewhere. The police needed to handle this. I called them up again. They said they were sending someone around. I stared at her, thinking about getting my phone out again and trying to record her, but I didn't want her to leave just yet, in case that was the reason she left before, so I just kept watching. I think maybe 20 minutes or so passed, just the two of us caught in each other's gaze, although I couldn't see her eyes, and for some reason, I wasn't eager to. Then suddenly she turned and began walking away down the same alley as before. Maybe I should have called out, but I didn't. Not sure if it would have made a difference. Soon after, like a matter of seconds, the police rolled up and I tell them where she went. They follow the directions I gave, but eventually come back with nothing. They couldn't find anyone matching the description and had searched the whole block. I was disheartened, to say the least. They left soon after. I stood outside and watched them drive away. I was about to go back inside when I looked down the alley. It was pitch black, that stretch of space, but there were lights illuminating the street on the other side. That's how I saw her, or her shape at least. Her head moving side to side, left, right, in the darkness. She'd come back and was staring at me again. I called the police again and told them she was back. Maybe I should have stayed outside, but I didn't want to feel her eyes on me anymore, so I went back in, and there I stayed for the rest of the night. I went to work the next day, but nothing felt right. I wanted to tell people about her, wanted to ask someone, "Hey, can I stay at your place tonight? There's a scary lady outside my window." Yeah, right. I didn't want to leave work, dreaded that time to go home, and when it finally came, I felt nothing but an empty pit in my stomach. What was going to happen, really? I'd look outside, she'd be staring at me, I'd call the police, then she'd disappear and reappear once they'd left. What was I supposed to do? I got home and just sat in my living room. It was kind of like waiting for a dentist appointment. You just wait with a gut-wrenching feeling until it's time to step up. I waited and waited until I just couldn't fight the feeling anymore. I went over to the window and peered through the curtains. I looked around but couldn't see anything. After a while, I felt comfortable enough to step outside. It felt nice to be out in the fresh air without the usual accompaniment. That was until I looked down the alley and saw her silhouette moving side to side, and once more I felt her staring in my direction. I was scared. Yeah, it's true. I'm not afraid to admit that this woman was genuinely unsettling me. There she was again, watching me, creeping me out, and so I shut my curtains and stepped away. I thought I could ignore her, just pretend she wasn't there, but the more I tried to relax, the more she was on my mind. After a while, I got brave and poked my eye through a small slit between the curtains. She was still there, only closer now, right on the edge of the alley and almost on my street. It was easier to see her now, but there was still like a veil of darkness covering her top half, her long hair shifting side to side. I just snapped. So angry that this crazy shit was happening to me. I headed down there. I slammed off my lights to my place as I left my apartment. I don't know, I guess I was kind of hoping that she'd see I was leaving and get scared and leave herself. I practically ran down those stairs, made my way over to the gate to my building and stopped. My anger was there, pushing me forward, but now she was in sight again and I could feel that fear creeping up. I took a deep breath, pumped myself up and thought, it's now or never. Throwing open the gate, I stepped out, trying to look as intimidating as possible. I got about halfway across the street when I heard her. This awful, guttural moan stopped me dead in my tracks. I couldn't take my eyes off her. Even when they started welling up, I was that scared. Then suddenly she started running right at me. It took me a moment to break away, but in that time I saw her run, arms down at her side, still swaying left and right. When I finally snapped out of it, I turned and sprinted back inside. Thank God I left the gate open. I was able to grab it and pull it shut behind me. It locked and she slammed herself against those thankfully thick metal bars. I jumped back when she did, but even then I could see she was taller than I initially thought. This woman towered over me. She kept on swaying and groaning. I thought maybe I could see her eyes glaring at me through her long hair that was webbing her face. I turned and ran back upstairs, her haunting calls chasing me up until they got quieter and quieter. I remember stopping outside my door, looking expectantly down the hallway, expecting her to come running up those stairs and charging towards me. But no, it was quiet and still. I took a deep breath and opened my door. Walking inside, I didn't turn my lights on right away, which was just as well, because when I shut the door behind me and turned to face my apartment, on the other side of the curtains to my balcony was a tall shadow. The lights on my street cast a perfectly nightmarish silhouette. She was right there, on the other side of the glass, waving left to right, over and over again. I ran outside and went to a friend's place in the same building. I did call the police again, but I'm sure you can guess how that went. After that, I took some sick leave and went to stay with my parents. Just over a week passed before I got the courage to return. I was dreading that first night back, so afraid she'd break in this time and do God knows what to me. When night did eventually come, I stood at those curtains, terrified she'd be there. Slowly I opened them, and nothing. She wasn't there. I stayed inside, but I did keep checking, and she was a no-show. Same for the next night, and every night since then. I don't know what was going on or why she stuck to me for the time she did. I'm not really a superstitious person, but something about this woman felt unnatural. I dunno. Be careful out there. I'm not saying ignore people you think might need your help, but just try to be on the more cautious side of things. Better safe than sorry, I guess. Definitely be on the lookout for this one. Don't interact or even think about looking in her direction. I'm calling her the Waving Woman, and you'll know her when you see her. Left, right, left, right, left, right.